Hello, everybody. So this is the Duke London podcast. This is not necessarily an episode per se. It's gonna be, I'm gonna do my thoughts on Breakin Convention because it just happened yesterday. It will be when this comes out. And yeah, I did the podcast recently with Jonzi. If you haven't checked out that episode, go check it out. And we spoke afterwards, and he said he would be interested in my thoughts on the festival. So here they are, very publicly. Yeah, so if you are tuning in and you had a chance to go see it, you can let me know if you agree with what I have to say. If you didn't see it, then here's my thoughts. Not necessarily gospel, just what I think. So yeah, the important thing was that, I think this is important to say before we start, is that this was not Breakin Convention at its fullest, let's say. There was already a kind of stripped back program, in the sense that a lot of the stuff that usually happens around the festival wasn't going to happen, I believe. So there's usually like ciphers in the breaks and beforehand, and DJs, and kind of a lot of mingling and stuff, which is part of what makes Breakin Convention, and that was not going to happen, obviously because of Corona. So there's already that to bear in mind. As well as that, again, due to Corona, there was a couple of acts, Company Naya, I hope I'm saying that right, and Day and Manuela, who were supposed to perform, but they are international acts, and it says on the website, due to international travel guidelines, quarantine, and visa restrictions, they can no longer appear. So I don't know the ins and outs of what that means, but obviously, as we know, everything's changing in terms of the rules. So Breakin Convention were already starting with these kind of setbacks, let's say. So Company Naya, I hope I'm saying that right, Naya, was supposed to perform Thursday and Friday night, and then we were supposed to have the kind of normal performances on Saturday and Sunday. So obviously Thursday and Friday got cancelled, and then Saturday and Sunday continued, but without Day and Manuela. And without all the things happening in the foyer and the lobby and all that sort of stuff. So it was just the show. I think that's dope that Breakin Convention did it. Like, it's easy to kind of cancel the show. I mean, it's not easy, but for us, it would change. Our perception would be neutral if they just cancelled it, because we're like, okay, there's nothing to like or not like, right? And if they do it, we're going to judge it based on what it was, without maybe considering the circumstances. So that's something worth bearing in mind. Also, they did try and do, I think it was, I want to say September or October last year, they did social distancing, which was another showcase of Breakin Conventions, and they put on a show when I think Sadler's was at 30% capacity at this point. I think this weekend was 50%, so that's cool. It was a bit more of an audience, I guess. Yeah, a bit more people, so that's good. So having said all that, I will talk about what I think about all the performances. There's not much else to kind of review besides what was on the stage. So this was the 18th year of Breakin Convention. They had 7 performances, and in between each of the performances, they played films. So part of this was, I guess, the lack of international guests to fill up the lineup, but also in between each performance, they had to clean the entire stage, which is a lot, but I guess with bigger venues and stuff, it's they've got different restrictions and rules. So in between each performance, they had to clean the stage, which meant that they dropped the curtain and showed a film in front of the curtain. It worked out pretty well. I think. The only thing I would say is that there was a big cleaning noise that happened at the beginning of a lot of the films, and if I would have maybe waited a couple of extra, like if they just kept us in the dark while this noise happened, because it was like 5 seconds long, I would have maybe waited, because it kind of interrupted the beginning of some of the films, but otherwise it was fine. Like, we didn't really feel the lack of performers in that sense. Like, I think one thing that Corona helped a lot is for us to kind of explore new ways of showcasing work, and I think films and dance on film is a really valid way of showing work, especially when it's done really well. So yeah, I wasn't mad at these films taking the place of some of the acts, and I think some of them were really good. So yeah, that was cool. So yeah, Jonzi hosted as usual. He did a great job, and he had a hard job, I think, because like I said, at half capacity, I'm assuming it was half capacity. I don't have the official numbers on that, but he had a lot of a job to do, I guess, to bring that energy out from the audience, being that there's less people, and to not let that affect him. I think he killed it, and he's good at that. Like, this is something he's done for years. Like, he's super energetic, super good performer, so he brought a lot of the energy. I actually thought the audience were pretty good. Like, I think it was I went on Saturday night. I think it was a lot of families. There's a few dancers I saw there, but a few people that were kind of by themselves or whatever, but I think it was mostly families. There's a lot of kids and stuff, and I think it felt like everybody was happy to just be out again doing stuff, which I think is the case for the last couple of events I've been to post-corona, that people are happy to be out, and the energy is coming from, like, I haven't done this in 2 years, plus them being impressed by what's on the stage. So I think the audience were pretty good. They made a lot of noise and stuff, and responded, and yeah, it was cool. I didn't really feel massively the lack of people in the audience, to be honest. I think one of the things is as well, like, Jonzi did well in the opening, because it's obviously a big part of what was going on, the whole Corona thing, and being at 50% capacity, not having the international audience, having people cancel. It's like kind of like an elephant in the room. And I thought Jonzi did well, because he came out with a tribute to MF Doom, which is, if you know, he is a rapper that passed this year. And is it this year or last year when he passed? I want to say maybe last year, but he famously wore a mask. So Jonzi did a great tribute to him, came out in an MF Doom mask and kind of spoke about him, but then kind of linked it to wearing masks, Corona, and kind of addressed it straight away without making it like, hey guys, how crap is this, So he addressed it and made it fun and made it kind of relevant and linked it to hip hop. So I thought that was really well done. That was a nice way to address it without just lingering on it and bringing the atmosphere down. Yeah, he did again his kind of trademark spoken word poetry kind of opening. Really nice. It's kind of what he's known for, and what, I think a lot of people like that sort of stuff. He's also really good at just dropping into it. It doesn't feel like I'm about to start a piece, He's just talking and then it starts to rhyme. And yeah, I thought it was really nice. So act wise, first act we had was War, We Ain't Regular. They've done a lot of work with like concerts and that type of stuff. They've performed with Stormzy. They're not a typical theatre act, but then again, most of Breakin Convention is not like typical theatre. I was interested to see what they did with it. Interesting that they opened the show, because I think they're quite a good... Not that the opening the show is always like bad acts or anything like that, but it's like usually work towards, I would say you work towards a higher level performances and shows as you go, and War are quite good. But I get, in terms of setting it up and programming, is like you notice that there's, you know that there's going to be half the audience, so having War first brings a certain level of energy, and they kind of, that's thing. They're high energy, they're young, they're kind of super full of life. So having them first, I get actually. Yeah, so I was interested to see what they did, because they're more of, I've seen them at like Dancer's Delight where they kill. I've seen them, you know, obviously with Stormzy and stuff like that. And this kind of like festival, showcase, concert type of environment suits them really well. They did that sort of stuff, which I actually liked, because even though it's not necessarily the venue for that, you know, everybody's sitting down and it's a lot of families and stuff. They did well in like transforming the space into that, you know, like the beginning of the piece, there was a lot of like, they pumped smoke into the stage, and then there was like red lights shone from the back, so they kind of came out silhouetted, and the styling is always on point with them, so they looked sick. And even though it was kind of just like straight up like just choreo, as opposed to maybe some of the more theatrical pieces, it worked really well. And they actually showed some maturity in that, in not trying to, which I've seen people do, you know, you're a hip-hop dancer, or you do a certain style of thing, and as soon as you get into a theater space, you're like, oh, must have side lights and must breathe heavily in silence, and like you kind of do what you think is required from that space. But what I liked about War is that they did what they do well, and it worked for me. Like they kind of turned the atmosphere into, it made me feel like I was at a concert, even with the lighting and stuff like that. It felt very gig type of performance, and I really enjoyed it. So that was nice. I really like that, and they kind of brought me into their world for that 5 minutes or however long it was. It was quite a short showcase, so that was cool. Yeah, pretty much everything on that. The film they had next was from the Next Day Delivery. So the Next Day Delivery, if people don't know, is another thing that Breakin Convention run, and it's basically, there's 4 pieces of music to choose from, I think. It's one dancer, one MC or spoken word artist, and a videographer. And you get everything 24 hours before the deadline. So you get everything you have to work with, and you have to go create within that 24 hours and deliver it. So Next Day Delivery, that's the name. Which is a cool concept if you have the time and energy for that. And they showed these films kind of throughout as the intervals between each live act while they were cleaning. There was one with Si Rawlinson, and I'm just going to check what his partner was called, because I don't know. Berkavitch, it says on the Saddler's website. I don't know Berkavitch, but it was cool. Really clever edit. They used like a Zoom kind of concept, where it was like a whole thing was like a Zoom call, and the guy was rapping and Si was like dancing and stuff, and they brought each other through the frames and stuff. So shout out to the editor. That was a nice edit. Could easily look shit, and it didn't. And I know that from editing. But yeah, it did a good job, and some really like clever little moments. It was funny. Yeah, it was like, wasn't my favorite film I've ever seen, but it was good. Like I really liked it. So then we had the performer Antonio. He is from Uganda. This is as Jonzi said on stage. I guess he was the only international one, really. I mean, Spin is Colombian, but he lives here. Yeah, I guess he was the only like out of the country thing. And I think he happened to be in, I want to say Scotland or somewhere. Jonzi told me, but I forgot. He happened to be in the UK, so they didn't need to worry about the quarantine things to bring him down to London for this show. So that's cool. He was good. He's a good dancer. It was a kind of show where, and I'm going to touch on this a bit later with Bagsy's piece, but he did a show where the idea was like based around him taking off and putting on items of clothing. I don't 100% know the kind of what the story was, to be honest. I don't know that I needed to, but yeah, so he had a kind of U shape drawn out on the stage with lights, and it was when he stepped into that, it was like him playing with being inside and outside of this space that he had created, and kind of walking around on the lines of it. And when he was outside, it was kind of more normal. When he was inside, it was more dance. He's a fantastic dancer. Yeah, moved really well. I think in terms of the concept and stuff, it wasn't. I've seen that concept before. I think we all have, like the light splitting up the stage. I mean, I've done pieces like that. And the idea of kind of changing when you go into different sections, it was cool. I think, I think this is the problem with a lot of stuff on Breakin Convention stage is, or not the problem, but you don't have an hour or even half an hour to really like build into a concept. So you kind of have to be in a way more clever, because you can't, if you take a really simple concept, but you explain it and explore it super well, then that's cool, and you've got time to explore it. You've got time to try different stuff and approach it in different ways. If you've only got 5 or 10 minutes, it's harder to really make the most out of a concept. So I think sometimes the more conceptual pieces of Breakin Convention work for me a little bit better than the simpler ones, in a kind of a really generalizing way, because you if the concept is unique and works immediately, cool. Or you don't even go for a conceptual thing and you just go straight dance, and in which case it's more the dance type of thing that works or doesn't. The next film was a film called Gaslighting. I don't know. Kim and Surid. I don't know them. It says next day delivery films come from winners Kim and Surid. So they won the next day delivery thing, which I don't know if I mentioned that, but it's a competition. So everybody that entered, I guess, gets their films shown at Breakin Convention, but also one group or trio wins. This film I really liked. I thought it was really well shot. It was one performer using popping. It was really maturely done, and the light, it's called Gaslighting. Again, I don't want to necessarily speak on the meaning or the message if I haven't spoken to the artist. I don't know, or even haven't been told. I haven't even been told what it's about, but I really liked it. It was just, a really nice edit, a really well shot piece. And the performer was good. She's a good popper. And the what I really liked was the lighting techniques. There was like 3 or 4 different lighting techniques, and they all worked really, really well. And so she used, well, I don't know who did it, whether it was the videographer or the performer that came up with the ideas, maybe all of them together, but it was all shot inside a house, and it was different things. Like there was one where the lights were off and it was like almost like a flashlight torch, like shining, kind of flickering across her while she danced. And a few other really clever ways of using light. And I can tell from what they did that it wasn't, like a professional lighting setup. Like they were making the most of what they had and could think of. So the fact that it came in 24 hours and they did this whole thing, I'm quite impressed by it. Not that I'm not impressed, but unless they had these things in the tank, they were like, oh, we're going to use this sometime, we're going to use this sometime. And so they had a bunch of lighting ideas that they wanted to do, and it just happened to fit this brief. Either way, it was really nice. I really liked the show. There was like a voiceover, like playing at one point in the first half, I think. I'm not usually a fan of the voiceover coming over the, like you have the backing track and then you have somebody speaking and quotes and stuff over the top. I don't usually love it unless it's done well. This was cool. I think it could have done without the voiceover. I think like letting us kind of infer the meaning without needing to give us more in the voiceover, I think it would have been fine without it. And I'm also big on less rather than more. But I mean, if that's what she wanted to do, or I don't know who it was that came up with the whole thing, but if that's what they wanted to do, then cool. It was still really good. It was my favorite. I think probably my favorite film from the night was that one. Then back to the live shows. It was atypical with attitude. So it used to be autism with attitude. I spoke to Jonathan, who is a choreographer, about the name switch. He said that whereas before they would, like, I think everybody in the group had autism, or it was kind of, that was what it was centered around. They wanted to kind of, let me see actually exactly what he said to me. He said, "We opened our doors to work with a lot more neurodiverse young people, not just autism. The students wanted to evolve the identity of the group further and include more types of SEND." So, yeah. So now it's atypical with attitude. Really cool. They did really good. Most of them are not professional dancers. Most of them are not, like, even adults. They're all quite young, I think. Like, I think at most teenagers. And they held the stage really well. They did great. I think, you know what I thought was cool, actually? They didn't, this, basically the way Jonzi did it is he didn't announce every act before, like, he didn't come on stage so some of them will run like 3 or 4, like it was like film, show, and then he came back on. So he didn't announce the name of AWA, which I think is cool, because I wonder if, I don't know for better or for worse, but sometimes if you explain the concept and the autism with attitude and the atypical with attitude, and these are a group of young autistic or atypical young men or young people, it maybe puts something in our head of how we view it. And I think, you know, that's fine for certain situations, because the whole idea of that group, I would assume, is to, like, help to, I guess, normalize it, to give these guys a chance to perform on stages and come together and work together on things. But not having it announced was cool, because I was like, cool, we're just considering them with every other act. And at times I like that. Like, you know, it's like, you know, it doesn't always need to be that's the center focus of their group, because they can dance and Jonathan can choreograph. So it's cool. You know, a lot of their performances are really nice. And if we, in certain moments when it's not necessary that they're not necessarily focusing on drawing attention to that cause, they can just be a part of the scene and just dance. And I think, you know, that's really nice. So that was, I think, I don't know whether it was unintentionally, but I thought that was really nice. I thought they did really well. I can see that Jonathan is a fan of, or has, like, trained with Boy Blue. I think he has. It's not a bad thing at all. It's just, like, kind of some of the choices I was like, okay, yeah, I see where you get your inspiration from. Like, you could easily see where I get my inspiration from in my choreography. So it's not at all a bad thing. It's just like, I was like, oh, cool. That's like a little, it's nice to see, like, all the places that, like, Boy Blue and Kenrick have kind of touched and reached throughout the scene, even with people that are not necessarily, like, representing Boy Blue. It's like their influence reaches out really far, especially at a place like Breakin Convention. The next film, I actually don't know who did the next film. It was, the next one was cool. It was mostly just focused on rap, and the production wasn't done by a professional, let's say. But still cool. I don't know whether when they found out about next day delivery that they knew they would have their films projected on such a big screen, because there's things to take into account when you're filming, depending on the size of the screen that is going to be viewed on. Like, some things look good on a phone, but when you blow them up, you kind of notice, oh, this wasn't filmed on a high-end camera, which is fine. Not everyone has or can afford a high-end camera. So, but yeah, this is just something to, I guess, be aware of, is like, depending on where your thing is going to be shown. And conversely, sometimes you don't need a high-end camera to film something for social media. You can create amazing stuff with a nice edit by shooting on your phone. But anyway, after that was Spin. So Spin was added to the act, as was Antonio. Antonio and Spin were both added to the lineup when Company Naya and Day Day cancelled. So I think, as far as I know, Day Day and Manuela were supposed to be in the show, but maybe I think Company Naya were as well as them having Thursday and Friday themselves. I think they were supposed to be in the actual program. I could be wrong, so I apologize if I'm wrong. But anyway, when I think it's 24th of June that this update is on the website. But when they cancelled, they added Antonio and Spin, and Si Stature is Spin's partner for this, to the lineup. I thought Spin's piece was sick. I'm not just saying that because I like him, but it was he developed this piece at Open Art Surgery with, I guess, the guidance of Jonzi and the mentors there. So it was him. Obviously, Spin's a b-boy. If you don't know Spin, check him out. I don't know why you know me and not Spin. And he was with a guy called Si Stature, who is a spoken word artist, I assume, or a rapper, depending. I don't know what his origins are, but he did kind of like spoken word on the stage. I mean, not kind of, it was spoken word. So Spin is Colombian. I assume Si Stature is also Colombian, although, again, forgive me if I'm wrong. But they were making a piece about, I guess, current events in Colombia, which was cool to see. You know what? It was cool to see Spin do something other than battle, because Spin is known for battles. He's very good at it. He's been doing it for a long time. And I know he's done stuff like Battle of the Year where they have to make showcase. I've seen Spin do a lot of like performances. He's with Pro Dance and he's done shows with them. So it's not like he can't do shows or choreography, but to see him like take something that meant something to him, and that, you know, from seeing his social media or just knowing that he's a guy who cares about where he's from, like that's something that's close to his heart, exploring it on that stage and in that way. I don't know, but I wonder if Jonzi reached out to him to do open art, or if he reached out to Jonzi to do open art. That would be interesting to know. But yeah, it's really cool to see Spin on that stage. The piece was really nice. I think they kept it simple, which is, for me, I'm like, I said this earlier, but like, that's always my go-to, is like, just keep it simple and effective, and then build the more kind of confident you get. It was the guy doing spoken word and kind of like not acting, but miming some of the words and stuff, which was really nice. I think he's sick. Really commanded the stage. No, like, I don't know him, but he's been on stage before. Like, he's performed before. Like, he was really good. And same with Spin. So together they really held the stage. And Spin was, a lot of the first half was kind of like breaking around him. Sometimes like it almost seemed like to the words, and sometimes it was like interacting with him in the character that maybe the guy took on for like a couple of seconds and then went back to performing for us. The lighting was really simple. It worked. It didn't need to be anything different. You know, one thing I really fucking liked with this was that there was a lot of moments where they spoke Spanish, and there was no attempt made to translate or to kind of like act out what they were saying or anything. It was just like straight up, some parts of it were just in Spanish. And I think that's sick, because it made me feel like it wasn't like too much like pandering to an audience. Like, you need to perform for an audience, but you also don't need to like spoon feed us. So it was nice to be kind of, because what happened was, when these bits that were in Spanish, you kind of had to infer what was happening. You have to figure it out from the movement, from the message, from the feeling behind what they were doing. And I liked being allowed to do that, like giving me some responsibility of like, yeah, you can figure this out, like even if you don't speak Spanish, and not like saying, don't worry, we'll figure everything out for you and we'll translate this so you know what's going on at every step. And it also felt very authentic. Like, it felt like, you know, they could speak this language, they were from this country, and they were doing what mattered to them, not like trying to make it English for us. So that was dope. I really like that. The end scene was mad powerful. It was like, actually, I'm not going to ruin that in case you haven't seen it, but the end scene of that piece was really powerful. They did a really nice like cut to black moment that really enhanced what they did at the end. Yeah, I'm trying to find a balance between talking about the pieces without necessarily ruining them. I don't think I can ruin these pieces, but moments like that where that was quite impactful. I won't tell you exactly what happens. Hopefully they release a video of it. And if he does, I would definitely suggest checking out Spin's piece. Let's move on to the next piece. Oh, it was a film. It was Anthony and Kel Matsena. It says Matsena Productions on the film, but it says here that it was called Too Much, Too Little. Yeah, again, really nice film, really professionally shot. It was like, I think it was, yeah, I guess they're twins. Like, they look mad similar. But like in two different locations, and unless one of them filmed and it was the same guy, I don't know. They look really similar. Two different scenes, two different locations, dressed differently, and just kind of dancing, and it was just following each of them, and then they kind of met up, and then the scene became one, and they were just staring at each other, and there was like a whole thing with it, but just in terms of concept and filming, it was really nicely done. Nice film. Effective in the time. Again, like keeping it simple. You don't have to go too crazy if going crazy isn't your strong suit. I don't know much about these two, but yeah, I think they did cool. It was really nice. It's hard to say a lot about the films because a lot of them were short, and it's a bit different from the stage shows, I think, to say much about. But anywho, moving on, we had Gemma Hoddy and what was it called? Betsy. I'm gonna look it up. Betty's Blues. I think that's a play on Betty Boop, and that the fact that Gemma was in Boy Blue, so Betty's Blues. If I'm wrong, and it was jazz. There's jazz music, so maybe the blues is about the jazz and not Boy Blue. It's hard not to see that connection though. So Betty's Blues, Betty Boop. So Gemma, I've seen this ages ago, and I can't remember where she first did it, but she did this as a solo, and it's basically like a kind of, I don't know if jazz is even the right, I guess it's jazz, but it's like almost could be like jazzy burlesque almost, like this type of, I don't know if that puts the right imagery in your mind. What it says here, Betty's Blues, a quartet of women performing a sassy blend of iconic jazz dance shapes punctuated by furious popping technique. Okay. Sassy is not a word I would use, but it doesn't not describe it. So anyway, Gemma's still in Dubai, as far as I know. So she put together this piece of 4 dancers and extended her solo and taught them it, as far as I know, over Zoom, which is pretty cool that she can, I guess, debut this quartet like from Dubai. So shout out to Gemma. That's cool that she did all those rehearsals and stuff through Zoom. The piece is cool. I think there's a nice concept to it. I actually think, not to say that this is better than her solo, but I think this is what her solo needed, is the like extending and exploring more of the concept. I think there's like work to be done in that, but I think the fact that she drew it out made it longer. I think it's longer, but with more dancers and you know, it would have been cool to see her in it as well. But like, I think where solos can limit you at points, I mean, having lots of dancers can also limit you, but where solos can limit you, this was cool, where she got to do other bits with it and fill a stage a bit more. So it was mainly popping. I think I would say for the most part is popping. They also included a bit of whacking, and there's one girl who I believe is a locker, so she had some locking stuff. It looked, I'm not the locking expert of the world, but it looked fairly like legit. I don't know that I've seen this girl battle in locking, although I don't always watch all the locking battles, so if she's been around, excuse me. But it looked cool. It looked like good locking. The whacking in the house was cool as well. I think the whacking, so I think it was just Francesca that did house, because it was, I don't know the 2 girls' names, but I know Francesca and Hannah were in it. Francesca, actually, her house solo, it was like really small, but it was really nice. You could tell she was super comfortable in that style, maybe more than some of the other things that she performed. But, you know, she's a good performer, and they all are, to be honest. I think, you know what I would say about this is that pop-in is a tough one. Because if, I was saying this to Jen the other day, if you don't practice hits all the time and have them really, 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 really in your body, and you can do them really strongly, almost without like thinking, when you go on a big stage and you try to blast your hits, sometimes we can see it, I think. And I think that was what I would say, just if I'm being critical or, you know, if I'm critiquing the dancers, I think it was the hits. I would have scaled them back a little bit and sacrificed a bit of the power for more of the cleanliness. That's just me and my artistic priorities. I think it looked nice, and to an audience, it looked really cool, and it looked like they were smashing their hits. I think it's easy to like throw away your hits and kind of, I don't know if you know what I mean when I say that, but like not keep them tight, and it kind of like they become loose and you like let them go a bit because you're trying to push them out to the audience. And yeah, I think you can tell when they're trying to push them just a bit beyond the technique that's in their body. The other thing I think is interesting is that Boogaloo steps always tend to be the go-to for popping in theatre or popping in performance. And I wonder why. Like, not that there's anything wrong with it. I just think that there's, you know, other ways to use popping technique on stage. You know, in a battle call, you have to fill quotas. You have to, you know, there's a whole thing with battles. But in terms of theatre, you can kind of do anything you want. So I guess my answer to myself, because it's just Jen here behind the camera, my answer to myself would be that Gemma wanted to pay tribute to the kind of boogaloos or the popping style, but I've seen it with other pieces where it's very like boogaloo heavy in terms of the vocabulary that's used for popping, where there's other ways to use popping to create shapes and effects, and it doesn't have, like in a theatre, it doesn't have to fit that popping umbrella, I guess. But that's me. Look, overall, it was a really nice piece, and I'm saying that because I'm critiquing it in that way because it's something that I'm interested in, and because I've seen Gemma do the piece before, and I know Gemma, and I like Gemma, and I'm sure she'll be fine with it. So yeah, not to say that the piece wasn't good. It was really good, and I really liked it, and I think Gemma should definitely keep going with this idea and dig into it more and develop it, especially when she's in the same room as the dancers. I think a bit of like R&D and exploration would have really like would really help this piece. It reminded me, put it this way, like I have the same critiques of this piece that I would have of a group like Femme Fatale. I'll leave that there. So next we had the break. The break was interesting. They played 2 films in the break, and it was a weird, I don't know, like the films were sick. So you had one by Apex Zero. It was it was a visual album, I guess, or like one part of a visual album. I don't know if that was the whole thing. And then the second was a film that actually Jonzi directed. Both of them were really, really good. I just think it, and I mean, again, you're doing what you can with the circumstances, you know. They didn't have the option to show these outside, or maybe they didn't have the option to do them during the show, but they were really good and really well done and really like kind of heavy as well. Like, yeah, they were kind of heavy, quite like political, social messaging and critiques, and it was done in a 20-minute break when people were kind of going in and out and talking and chatting and having their drinks and seeing their friends. And I thought it was a bit like, it doesn't seem like break material to me, but that's because the films were so good. So in a way, that's a good thing that even in the break, the material was super strong. I don't know that I would, if I had another option, I would have put it in the show when people were sitting down and kind of watching properly. Actually, like the films got people's attention. Like, so at the beginning, they showed kind of just clips from the interval at past year. So it was like the twins ciphering. And at the end, it was a trailer for the Ruggeds show, which is going to be, I think, in September, I want to say 15th to 18th September. Shout out to the Ruggeds, because if it's the same piece that I've seen bits of, it's fucking dope. If it's a new piece, I have all the faith in the world, it'll be sick. So they're having their own show at Breakin Convention in September. I'll definitely be there. Yeah, so then in between these two kind of like light adverts, you had these really heavy films. And again, like I said, people were going in and out, but like the films got people's attention. So even after the first one, there was like a massive round of applause, even though people were not all in the thing. Like people, it got their attention enough that they wanted to give it a round of applause at the end. So yeah, I really like both of those films. I just don't know that I liked them being in the break, but it's all good. So then second half, started off with Bagsy. He developed his piece. If you don't know Bagsy, he's a whacker. And he does a lot of other stuff. I think I first saw him when he did House, I think. And he developed his piece, he said, at Back to the Lab. They didn't announce that, but he told me. The piece was really good. Like, Bagsy is tall and he fills a stage really well. You can tell, like, he knows how to fill a stage. I swear Bagsy loves to be topless. Like, every like judge demo was, I swear he's been topless. But dude's in shape. If I look like that, I'd be topless all the time. So yeah, no, but like he did a piece which I'm gonna read. I don't want to like speak too much on what it was about because I don't know, like everyone's. I can't say what they were about in that way, in air quotes for people listening. But what they've written on here is, okay, well they've just written, whacking artist Bagsy asks what it means to be a man. Interesting. There was a kind of, I find, like heavy African influence to the music, even to the visuals. And I assume it was something around what it means to be a man, especially from that perspective and through that lens. He used a big, like, purple cloth. Not really a cloth, but like a big material. It was like really, really big. And he kind of played with it a bit, used it, and then was underneath it and ended up kind of wearing it around his waist, and it made like a really beautiful kind of like, almost like skirt. I don't know what's the difference in a skirt and a dress. Jen, what's the difference in a skirt and a dress? Is it a dress that comes up to here? Yeah. Okay, so it was if it's waist down, it's a skirt. Okay, cool. So it was a skirt. She's laughing at me. So yeah, it made like a really beautiful skirt that like started at his waist and went like all the way like in a big circle radius around the stage, which was really, really nice. I think, so this is what I was going to talk about with the other guy. I've seen a lot of pieces where people use a thing. So like they use, like for example with Bagsy's, it was the cloth. The material, it's not cloth, I don't know why I keep calling it that, like the big piece of material. Or the other guy, he used like he took off his jacket and then he took off his shoes, he put one shoe back on. It's like something to do with their shoes. I've seen pieces where people are like, have a mask and they take it off, put it back on, blah blah blah. And it makes me think about something in cinema where it's called a MacGuffin, right? I don't know where that name came from, I'm sure there's a reason, but the idea being that it's a narrative device that you use to kind of push the story forward. So if you think about the Infinity Stones in Avengers, those are MacGuffins. If you think about the mother boxes in DC, those are MacGuffins. Star Wars had the last trilogy had those fucking boxes that were like, oh, this shows you where the Sith are. Like, the point being is that, like, if you're not building the story around character or circumstance, let's say, you can insert one of these MacGuffins, like, well, everyone needs to get that thing, so that's what the story is about. How do we get the thing and how do we use the thing? So I see this a lot in shows as well, like theatre show and dance shows, where it's built around this, for want of a better phrase, like the MacGuffin, right? And it's like the thing that pushes this narrative forward is this thing that we're either trying to get. It can be a light at the end of the stage that we're trying to get towards. It can be a shoe, it can be a cloth or whatever. And I think it's just something to be aware of, that I think at times people can lean on them a bit too heavy and think that having one of these objects is gonna like do the work for them. I don't think that about Bagsy's piece. That is just what it reminded me of. I think actually Bagsy this is an example of him using it really well. Like, when I first saw it, I was like, okay, what's going to happen with that? But the way that he danced with it, the way that he moved around the stage, like, he couldn't have done that with anything else. He couldn't have done that with a t-shirt. Like, it needed to be that cloth, that material. And he did a lot of really interesting things with it. Even the section where he was underneath was really different. And I was like, that's cool. And I think he used it really, really well. It just reminded me of moments where I've seen pieces that didn't use it well. And yeah, it's just something that I made a mental note as a choreographer to be like, got to make sure that if I'm going to do this, I do it well, like Bagsy did. But yeah, I really liked it. Dude can fucking dance. Like when he did like a whole whacking section, I think towards the end, which was like just straight, like boom, 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 arms. And I was like, fuck me. Like he's actually got really good, like quality of movement. And yeah, it looked good. Like the audience reacted, I love when that happens, is when the audience reacts to just good movement quality, as opposed to like somebody did a backflip or there was a big flash of light. Like he was just going bam, 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 bam with his arms, and the audience were like cheering. So I was like, nice. That was a nice moment. Because I think in those moments, even a kid can recognize like, okay, this is dope. You don't need to know what's happening or the technique or whatever. But yeah, there was a nice piece. I would like to see it explored more. He performed with a musician who came on and off stage. I don't know if he was still playing when he was off stage. I think it went to a track. But the musician was really good. I don't know. It doesn't list here who the musician was, but shout out to him as well. But yeah, really nice piece. I think the everything was done well with the lighting and stuff. I think the live music was a welcome addition. But yeah, it was really cool. Really nice. Then we had another film, which was Birdgang's film. I don't know what the name of it is. Ensign? I don't know how you would say that. Ensign 7? I could be wrong. Apologies if I'm wrong, guys, if you're even listening. The piece was filmed at, I don't know the name of the venue, but it's like a big concert hall, and there was a guy playing piano, and it was like classical piano, not like Ray Charles. And it was, I think there's 5 of the bird dancers kind of dancing around the piano while the guy played. It was very Birdgang, which is a good thing. Quayle directed, I believe. I saw at the end, and I wasn't surprised. It was like very like shadowy in places and illusionary, and a lot of stuff where like the piano was like flat and like the fingers came over the top and stuff and created these kind of shapes. There was the camera work was a bit wild. Me as a videographer, I wouldn't have tried to film that way, but that's just my preferences. Like I think it worked for the thing because it was a bit all over the place, and it was like almost not unsettling. What's the word? Like it would go over and turn upside down, and it would kind of play with your where you were in your kind of setting. So it like flipped you upside down as the viewer, which is always a bit what's the word for that? Not unsettling, like not unnerving. Anyway, it just kind of like, yeah, played with your perception as the viewer, as opposed to only relying on the dancers to do that and for them to turn upside down, etc. It was really cool. It flipped between like the dancers in like suits or like typical, I don't know how you'd call that, but like what an orchestra would wear to perform, and then into like sort of camo outfits. Yeah, all of the stuff I think worked really well. It's a really nice like closing shot. The last shot I really liked. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I've worked with Quayle like not loads, but a bit, and I've worked with Bird a little bit, and I know them, and I like what they do. It was good. I don't know what they're planning to do with that piece, but yeah, I really like it. The dance is good. Like the way they use dance to create little scenes and flip from one thing to the other. It's always like super ambitious. And I think this is one of those moments where it's like, okay, if you're Quayle, you don't need to go simple. You know what I mean? I don't think it was just him that choreographed, but it's like some people I say, okay, keep it simple if you don't know that you can do this. But it's like with people like that, it's like they can go ambitious, because they can pull it off. So that was cool. And then straight after was Spoken Movement, who performed essentially like third to last. This piece was fucking sick. I've seen, I think, an extract of it, and I know they've like toured around the world a lot. yeah, I think for me this was like the best piece. I mean, I would be tempted to say it's not just for me, it's like for maybe a lot of people. This is probably the best piece of the night. You can tell that they've developed this piece and they didn't just make it. Like it's I don't even know if this was an extract. I don't know if it says on the website. I'm just checking. Does it say whether it's an extract or whether it's a full length? I don't know. I don't even know that it says Spoken Movement exploring. Spoken Movement is back with Family Honor, exploring the religious and cultural taboos in a Ghanaian family. It doesn't say whether it's the whole piece, but I think it was, I don't know how long it was. A bit longer than the other pieces, but yeah, fucking dope. Like, really, really well choreographed. There was no real soundtrack. It was just like a low, bassy grumbling. And they were kind of moving. There's two people sitting at a table. And they were moving and interacting with each other. Super, like, fast-paced contact. And, yeah, it was just like, shit, like, you've rehearsed the hell out of this. So it was really nice. Like, it was funny at the end, like, there was some people that stood up and gave it standing ovations. And as I was looking, I was like, oh, it's the dancers that are standing up. Like, I think some of the audience were like, oh, that's cool. But, like, the people that I was watching giving it a standing ovation, I was like, oh, you're the dancers that know how hard that is to do. Yeah, it was super dope. And it reminded me, there's a piece that I love called The Statement by Crystal Pite. It reminded me a bit of that, not in the way that it was at all similar as a piece, but just in the fact that, I guess this is the whole thing with spoken movement. Maybe this is not why the name is the name, but there wasn't so much dialogue, but it was very clearly narrative. It was like when it says exploring the religious and cultural taboos in a Ghanaian family, like, yeah, it was. And the back and forth between them, I was like, it was very hand driven and like gestural. Like it was like they were saying stuff. And it just happened to be that it was all choreographed and moved. So I really, and it's the same with The Statement, where she uses a lot more full body movement, and those dancers are like super. I think it was with NDT that when I saw it, I don't know if that's the only people that have performed it, but they're like super trained. So like it was like full body movement and really like technically crazy shit. And this one was a bit more restricted and just hands and head and stuff. There was moments where they got on the table and they did big movements, but as a whole, the majority of the piece was more tight choreo. And it looked like they were speaking with their hands and talking, and you kind of understood the subtext and what was happening and the power dynamic. Even if you didn't know exactly what was being said, you're like, oh, he's pissed. or she's like low, like in this position where she's looking up to maybe the male figure was older or something. You know what I mean? And you got all this from the movement and through the kind of, yeah, I guess it was almost like high speed body language type thing, which again, The Statement is similar, but The Statement, the other piece I was talking about, works with dialogue. So they're dancing completely on words and they're dancing the words. Whereas this was no dialogue. Well, there was moments of dialogue, but in between the scenes almost. So when they're going for this choreo, it's not, there's no words. It's just, they're just moving. So that was really cool. And I think it's a sick concept. I already kind of knew the concept before. Like I said, I'd seen little extracts ages ago. But yeah, that's a fucking phenomenal piece. And it really, like, for me, like, stood out like a step above some of the other pieces. Not in a bad way. It's just really fucking good. Next, we had a video, another film called Power to the Pixel. This was interesting to me because it had very pandemic-y, anti-vax type of, not quite conspiracy stuff, but like it had that vibe. I mean, it said pandemic on one of the stickers at some point, and like they were talking about, there was one bit talking about like people being like, you being magnetized after you got a vaccine. So here's what I find interesting. I'm very much not on that viewpoint, right? I'm not too much into that side of the way of thinking around corona. And I'm not going to go too much into that debate. What I thought was interesting, which I don't necessarily have an opinion on or an answer to, but is where we might start to get into a stage with hip hop where people are expressing different opinions than what we agree on, right? And that sounds like duh, but also it's not, because a lot of hip hop and the arts in general tend to be around similar type of things, right? So in hip hop, we are like, well, sexism is wrong and racism is wrong, and everyone else is like, yeah, racism is wrong, yeah, sexism is wrong. There may be like a lot of contrary actions, even in regards to like homophobia and stuff, where you have a lot of rap music that is still homophobic. However, most people around the culture will be like, no, I love gay people, you know? And it's like, it's more about how people will speak rather than their actions. Different topic for another time. I don't want to get into like that now. But it made me think, because when I saw the video, I was a bit like, ugh. But I think it's interesting because it's like, then what do we value freedom of expression, or do we value freedom of expression based on what we want you to express or what we agree on? Like, you can express yourself about being oppressed as a black person because that's something I agree with. You can express yourself about being a woman in a male dominated world because I agree with you and I support you. Oh, you can't, you know? And not that anyone was like, you know, this was showcased on a big stage, and you know, I would never say don't put this on stage or whatever, but it's just interesting because I know a lot of people that would agree with what the points expressed in this video. I also know a lot of people that would disagree with it. And it's just interesting that like we may move into a space where there's a way more, especially where hip hop's growing and more people are involved and from different, and there's more issues arise that are not so clear cut as that. We may get into a space of like more varied and diverse opinions and points of view, and I think it'd just be interesting to see how people go about that. Like I was saying as well, like I'd be super interested to see if there was like, let's say like there was a hip hop song about something, I don't know, like even something like gun control, but from the other side, like we need guns or something, you know what I mean? Like, or, you know, that's a more American thing, or like even something, you know, like someone making a rap video about like being homophobic and leaning into it, or being super religious, or I don't know. But like, do we value the freedom of expression over the topics, or do we value like you have to, you know, yeah, it's a hard topic. I won't get too much into it, especially when there's no one here to discuss with, but I just think it's interesting. This is like such a this is what people do when they're trying to be like shady. I just think it's interesting how you would say that. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Yeah, no, but I do think it's interesting. Yeah, if we move into that space, what people's reactions will be and how much we're like forced to conform, even if we're expressing ourselves in the anti-conformists way of expressing themselves, which is what hip hop was born from, I would assume, or I would say it in that way. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Moving on from that, I just think it's interesting. Yeah, so then we had the final act, which was Patience J. The Saddler's website says, Patience J returns to Breakin Convention with energy and attitude in the celebratory piece Colours. So, I cannot address the final piece of the show without also noting that Boy Blue weren't there this year. Because Boy Blue have closed the show at Breakin Convention for almost all of the years. And it's been 18 years, so that's a lot of years. I don't know that it's been every year. I think maybe there was one that they didn't do from my memory of my last conversation with Kenrick. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. So, there was no Boy Blue. I don't know why. It's easy to write it off as a Corona issue. I don't know. I don't know if there's a reason. I don't know if I'm assuming they'll be back next year. I know it's not because Boy Blue aren't around or doing things. Like, I just would imagine that with that big of a group, maybe it's hard to rehearse that much of a like size of a piece. I'm not really sure. I'd be interested to know how come Boy Blue weren't there. They didn't really address it except for during Gemma's piece. At the end of Gemma's piece, Jonzi addressed that Boy Blue weren't going to be there, but they were kind of there through Gemma, who was like an OG of Boy Blue. And I don't know how many of the dancers were Boy Blue dancers. Maybe all 4 of them are Boy Blue. I think Francesca was in Boy Blue. Anyway, so that's the only time they addressed it. They didn't really give us an explanation of why Boy Blue weren't there. Didn't really owe us one, but it's just something I'm wondering. So, Patience J closed the show. It was very Boy Blue energy. Not in any other way, just besides how powerful it was. There's a lot of dancers, more than the other pieces, I think. And that tends to be Boy Blue's like calling card, is like there's a lot of dancers. It's very strong, powerful movement. And Patience J had that in different ways. This piece was Boy Blue, I would say, lean toward the kind of dark and moody, powerful, if you know what I mean. This was a more upbeat, vibrant, fast-paced piece. Yeah, really cool. The dancers loved the audience loved it, which was good because I think it was a good Breakin Convention closer. That was a good programming choice, I think, to close with this. It was like fun, upbeat, happy, lots of dancers, super powerful, good music. The dancers could dance, but they also performed really well. I think I would have been tempted to question maybe putting spoken movement at the end, but I also think it was quite a dark piece to end on, and it's not just about, ranking the pieces best to worst or whatever like that. It's about, curating the show and curating the audience experience. So you want to make people leave with a happy feeling. However, if they have a happy feeling but the piece isn't good, that is also, or it is I don't know what the word is, but like, if it's noticeably worse than another one of the pieces, that's the balancing program. You want to leave on something strong and happy or upbeat or whatever. If you're doing this type of mixed bill, Breaking Convention type thing, I think. Never programmed a big festival, fuck do I know. But that's what I would say. And this did it. Like, it was really good and it was happy, upbeat. It wasn't so much of a like message. There was not like so much of a thing behind it, I don't think. It was just very good, upbeat dancing. It was like an extended kind of like showcase. I think with that in mind, the structure of the music worked really well. It was a nice flow between pieces. Sometimes when you have multiple tracks in your piece, it can sometimes cut the energy, and if you cut it too soon or whatever, it kills it and there's too many interruptions. But this was nice. It was really well done. The transitions, the staging, the way they moved between pieces was really fluid. So for what it was, they did really well at that. And everybody was, the audience loved it. It was a really nice way to wrap up the show. And the dancers are sick, like really good. All of them were like good quality dancers. So while it wasn't Boy Blue, and it's hard to not have them. You don't want to put the expectations and say, oh, you have to fill Boy Blue's shoes. But when they've closed the show for like majority of 18 years, it's going to kind of come with the territory that you're closing the show that Boy Blue usually have. So I don't know that everyone in the audience knows that Boy Blue closed the show every year. But for me, I was watching it and I was like, okay, let's see what you do in Boy Blue's place. And I think they held it down. I think they did a good job. Yeah, that's it really. That's all the pieces. I hope it's not been fucking boring. But yeah, that's what I think. I think overall it was a good show. I think I noticed the lack of an international audience, international performers. I would have liked that. That would have made it better for me. I think it was cool to, have only mainly, aside from one, I guess, like UK acts. I think that was cool. It was nice to get these people to have a chance to show their work. It was nice to have some films on there to mix it up a bit. It was different. And I think, yeah, I would have liked to see the international companies. I would have liked to see Company Naya and Dede Emanuela. And I would have maybe liked to see more than that anyway. But that's kind of what I like about Breakin Convention, is that you get a mix. So without the mix, I felt, because that's something I always focus on, like, okay, we get these few people that I haven't seen their work, they're from a different country, and I get to see Spin, or I get to see Bagsy, and people that I know. You know, the whole the whole branding of Breakin Convention is like the best from around the world and around the corner. So this was like mostly around the corner, which again, you have to give them props, because there's a lot of people that aren't putting on events right now that were running small events, let alone the biggest festival of like hip hop dance in the UK, and they put it on and they made it happen. So I can't really criticize the lineup too much, because they did the best they could with what we have. And luckily we have a fucking pretty good bunch of dancers in this country. You know, we're not lacking in good artists. So the people that they filled in with held it down. It's just, for me, is the like different aspect that I would have I like about Breakin Convention, is being able to find new people that I haven't seen before, or that I wouldn't get a chance to see. So yeah, I mean, you know, what can you do? They did a great job. They worked around the corona stuff. You know, they had to cancel the Thursday and Friday, which is a shame, but you know, I think that they had a lot of people there still. It didn't kill the attendance. It didn't kill the vibe. It didn't kill the level of the showcase. It was still good. It was just a stripped back version of Breakin Convention without all the stuff happening in the lobby. And yeah, it is what it is. Like, you know, once we get back to normal, these things are going to come back to full power. Like, Breakin Convention will be straight back at where they were, as well as all these other other events and stuff coming back. So yeah, I really liked it. I love all the people that were on stage. I know a large portion of them. I don't really know War personally, Patience J, I don't know personally, but I know the rest of them. I think a lot of them, the other ones from the UK. So big shout out to you guys. Like, hope you don't mind me critiquing your work, but I don't think I said anything horrible. It was all good work, you know. And yeah, Breakin Convention, thanks for having me, and thanks for doing Jonzi, thanks for doing the podcast recently. Like I said, if you haven't checked that out, go check it out. Let me know what you thought of the show. If you can, leave it as a comment in the comments. Please do. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if you agree or disagree with anything I said. It's totally fine. We're allowed to disagree, guys. And yeah, that's it, really. So catch you again soon for the next episode of the podcast, which will, I believe, unless anything goes wrong, touch wood, will be an interview. So yeah, tune in soon, and see you later, guys. Ssebuuma.